everybody, it's Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting. In this video tutorial, I'm going to walk you through making your Trevor the Tree Frog zipper bag in the hoop of your machine. Now at the very end, I'll give you instructions on how you can complete, the front and the back in the hoop and then do the binding on your sewing machine. Or you can complete the bag totally in the hoop, which makes it about a 1/4 inch smaller all the way around, but you don't have to do binding. So it would look like this on the edge, and I'll show you that finished off. And I'll show you how to do it on the sewing machine at the end in this video tutorial. So first things first, you want to gather all the materials that you'll need. So when you open your kit, you'll have your pattern. You can set that aside. You'll want to make sure when you download the embroidery files that you download the machine embroidery instructions as well. You'll have your buttons, your designer label, all your pre-fused laser cut pieces. You'll have your zipper that you need. And then from the fabric included, you get a 1/4 yard of fabric in this month's box. You'll cut 2 pieces at 9 by 3, 2 pieces at 9 by 7, and 2 pieces at 9 by 9. And then you'll do the same with the fusible batting, except you'll only cut 1 of each. 1 at 9 by 3, 1 at 9 by 7, and 1 at 9 by 9. Alrighty, so you'll also want to make sure that you have a hoop that is large enough to accommodate 8 inches square. So mine actually accommodates about 9 inches square. I have it hooped with a medium tearaway stabilizer. And at the beginning, for the most of this, until we get to the actual decorative stitches, we're going to be using a white thread. So go on and have your white thread threaded, and then you'll just want to have a black thread available for when we're doing the decorative stitches. You'll also want to have, I always like to have an extra bobbin because inevitably I run out when I'm doing this. And then you'll want to have a very small needle threaded with a black thread, so when we sew on Trevor the Tree Frog's eyeballs, you're ready to go. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we've loaded the file for the back. Let me move you to my embroidery machine. So what we have loaded is the file that's going to do the straight line quilting on the back. So the first step, you're going to put your foot down. Ooh, I have to make it go to embroidery first, excuse me. Now put your foot down and hit start. And what it's going to do right now is stitch an 8 inch square. And this is going to be an outline telling us where we're going to put our pieces. Now what we're going to do in the background, let me switch you back over to me because that's not fun to watch, just stitch that. You are going to want to take your 2 9 inch squares for the lining and the outside back of your bag, and then the 9 inch piece of fusible batting. That's what we're going to be working with in this step. Now just take your iron and give this a nice quick press. I'm using this adorable little steam fast iron. You'll see when we're working in the hoop and ironing down our applique pieces that this iron is very handy. So I'm going to set one piece aside, and then I'm going to identify which side of my fusible batting is the fusible side. So this side has like a texture, it's a little rough if you will, and this side is soft like regular batting, so it's not fusible. The rough side is the sticky side. I'm going to put the sticky side up. I'm going to put my background piece. The fabric for the lining of the bag and the outside of the bag are the same this month. Normally what you would want to do, just as a frame of reference, is have the piece that's for the outside of the bag ironed to your fusible. But again, this month, that doesn't matter because we're using the same fabric for the lining as we are for the outer part of the bag, and it's not directional, which really makes this whole process so much easier. Sometimes directional fabric is just really good for the design, and sometimes we get lucky and find fabrics that aren't directional and are still super cute. Okay, so we have this ready, and what we're gonna do now is set that aside, and let's grab, excuse my arm reach, and we're gonna pull our hoop. All right, so this is the way this is the direction that it hooks on the machine. This is the back side of my machine, right? The northern side of my hoop, the southern side of my hoop. Make sure that you pay attention to how your file is oriented on your screen, because in this step, after it quilts, it's gonna attach our Stitches of Love label. So the way I have this oriented on my screen is where my label is gonna be going this direction. Again, it's not as big a concern right now because none of our fabrics are directional, but I just want you to have that frame of reference for the future. So you're simply going to plunk this down. Now the outline that we stitched is 8 inches square. The fabric that we had you cut is 9 inches square. So you have more than enough room. If you want to give this a little tape down, you certainly can. So I'm just going to put a little piece at the bottom and a little piece at the top. Now, carefully flip this over. And now you can see we have the back. And you're going to take that remaining 9-inch square piece and you're going to tape it covering here. So what this is going to do, in the hoop, we are going to complete one side of our zipper bag, the back side. So it's going to be fully quilted. It's got really cute straight line quilting. I think it adds like a modern touch. And especially with the label, it looks really finished. And again, this, if it was different fabric for the inside and outside of the bag, this would be the lining fabric that you would be putting on the back of your hoop. And so just use as much tape as you think you need. I use home office tape, and that's only because I love that it is on this stand. You can use whatever tape you like to use. So again, flip it back over. We have this in place. We are going to put this on the hoop of our machine. So let's switch to the view where you can see what's happening at the machine. Okay, so go on and place this on. And now find your thread and hold it. And put your foot down. So now we're gonna do a whole quilting part. So the machine is going to do an 8-inch square, just like it did at the beginning. And that's gonna hold the top and bottom in place. And then it's gonna go to work quilting. So we'll let that quilt out and we'll be back in just a second. Now the machine has finished quilting everything. Let me just pull this off so you can see everything is quilted with a straight line. And now if you do not want to use the designer label, then you're done with the back. So the designer label is this really pretty Stitches of Love logo label that you can put on the back, and doing so I think gives it a really nice finished look. So you would simply, if you want to use the designer label, simply hold your thread and prompt to the next step. And what this is gonna do is stitch an outline guide of where you're gonna wanna put the label. So just let it stitch that rectangle. And then let's just come down here and I'm gonna show you how to put that in place. Alrighty, and I took my frame off a little fast. Okay, so it's really hard to see with this print, but do you see there is a rectangle stitched right here, right? So you're gonna put this down in front of you and you are gonna take this label and you are gonna make sure that you line it up. It's gonna fit just inside in terms of height. And then it's gonna be a little longer on the edges because these are specially made labels for us and they vary a little bit in the width. So once you have it in place, grab your tape and you are going to simply put a piece of tape on each end to hold it in place. And this is giving it a really nice finished look, and it only takes, what, a minute more to complete. So let's go on and put this back on the hoop. Let me switch the view where you can see what's happening. Alrighty, put your foot down, and then it's going to sew that down in place just inside of that original rectangle it just stitched for you. Beautiful. So now you are completely done with the back. So what you have is, let me give you a preview, a perfectly completed back of your zipper bag completed in the hoop. So you have the really pretty label on it. It's quilted with this darling straight lines. And then the inside is also finished off beautifully as well. So now it's time to take this out of the hoop and set it aside. So now it's time to do the front of our zipper bag. So I have my hoop ready to go with my stabilizer. Again, the hoop is large enough to accommodate at least 8 inches by 8 inches. If you're ever not sure, most machines have a little button that will do, kind of looks like a square with an arrow, or it does on mine, at least for Brother. And it will do a sample and show you the outermost points of your embroidery so you know before you start that you're in the right hoop. Now, most machines, if you have a newer machine, it's going to tell you before you even try this if your hoop is big enough. But just in case your machine is older, you should be able to still do a quick guide and make sure you have enough space in your hoop. So once you've done that and you're ready to go, send it to Embroidery, load your machine with white thread still, put your foot down, and very similar to doing the back, it's gonna stitch a rectangle. This is gonna be our guide throughout making the front of the bag. We're going to be constructing using what most people call the flip method. We're gonna end up taking pieces, sewing, and then flipping them up. But what's gonna happen right now, it's gonna stitch this 8-inch rectangle, and then you're gonna notice about a third of the way down, it's gonna stitch 2 straight lines. So while this is stitching, get your zipper ready because we are going to be working with the zipper in this very first step. Now again, the fabrics this time for this month are not directional, but you want to pay attention to the direction that your file is facing in your hoop. So for example, for me, because I like my zipper to go from left to right, I have it loaded where the front or the top of my bag is on the left and the bottom of my bag is actually towards the right, or for the camera, towards the top of the camera. So just always know that when you're placing fabric or placing a zipper, that you're cognizant of the direction of your file, you're cognizant of the direction of your zipper, and you know if your fabric is directional or not. And so we just have one more straight line to stitch real fast, and then it's gonna be time to tape this zipper in place. Alrighty, so now take your hoop off the arm of your machine. Now you're gonna put it down right in front of you, face up. I have to turn mine simply because my machine and the camera are different directions, but yours you'll be able to take off and put straight down right in front of you. And you'll see that you have these 2 lines, right? Now what you're gonna do again is pay attention to which way you want your zipper to pull. I want my zipper to pull from top to bottom. So for this case, for what it looks like on the screen to you, is left to right. So I am going to simply make sure that I put my zipper where enough of it hangs outside of this square that's originally stitched. And then of course you're gonna have more than enough hanging off on one end because the zipper is much longer than you need. But they don't make exact zippers for this, so this is perfect. Now you're gonna wanna make sure you tape it straight. And if you wanna do a piece of tape in the middle, you're more than welcome to. But you're just gonna cover the sides, okay? So that's it, that's all we have to do in this step. So let's get this sewn on. So you're gonna put it back on the hoop of your machine. Now when you're doing this, again, sorry I have to move the camera, you guys. I am not a videographer, so just bear with me. So when you put this back on the hoop of on the arm of your machine, be careful that you're not getting your zipper caught in any mechanism. You wanna be sure that that's loose and happy. So simply put your foot down. You can hold your thread if you want. I'm gonna risk it and not hold it right now on film. And then what your machine is gonna do is put your zipper in place on the stabilizer. Now, of course, it's gonna be secured further with fabric further on, in a few steps. But this right now is keeping it in place so that we're ready to go. Now, while that's stitching, go on and have the 9x3 front and back pieces. Again, it's the same fabric this month, so don't have to think much. And have your 9x3 inch piece of fusible batting ready to go. Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna get to where some of the magic starts happening. And this is where a lot of people call it a flip method because we're gonna put fabric in place and then flip it. So first, this is the hoop face up. Let's flip it over where the back is facing up, okay? And what you're gonna do is take one piece of 9" by 3" fabric. You're gonna put it face down towards the hoop. And now look at where that very top line is that's stitched. See this top line of your zipper? Or really it's the right side of your zipper. You are gonna make sure that you cover it with a 1/4 inch, because what we're gonna do is stitch along that exact same line, and this is gonna end up being our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is why we like to work with, you know, rather large pieces compared to what we need, because if you're off a little, let's say you accidentally did it 1/2 inch, you still have enough fabric that when it flips, it's gonna cover the outer part of the bag. If you wanna get a ruler out and measure a 1/4 inch, you're more than welcome to. I just eyeball it. Alrighty. You get one there. All right, and, oh, I almost forgot a piece on the bottom. Not good. There we go. And again, be real careful not to press too hard. Now we're gonna flip over. We're gonna do the same thing on the front. And you can see through, can you see how I have about a 1/4 inch of the fabric on the back showing on top of my zipper? All right, so grab your other piece and we're gonna do the exact same thing. Make sure that you have about a 1/4 inch and do your best to get it straight. There you go. So we've covered that. So just gonna do a big old piece of tape right here. There we go. And I'm gonna do one more piece on the bottom, even though you really don't need to because it's on the top. But okay, so see, that's secured in place. So now let's put this on the hoop or on the arm of our machine. Okay? So just when you're putting it on there, be really careful. Again, you're not catching the zipper and you're not distorting the fabric that you just taped on the back. You are gonna put your foot down and you're gonna see that your machine right now, if your machine shows you what the stitch is gonna look like, you're gonna see just one line. And that's what it's doing right here. And you can see, look, I got this actually really close to almost 3/4 of an inch above for my seam allowance. But that's no big deal. If you wanna trim it, you're welcome to, if you give yourself too much wiggle room. But I'm not gonna worry about it. Okay, so now some more magic. Let's get the camera in position. You're gonna take this off the arm. And what you're gonna do is turn it over first. Let's remove that tape. So I have the back side facing up, right? And we've just stitched one straight line right here. I did good with my 1/4 inch on the back. Got a little overzealous on the front, but again, no big deal. When it's finished, it won't harm a thing, but you're welcome to trim it if you want. And now you're gonna flip this up. See, I have way more than enough fabric to cover that outer seam. So I just kind of finger press and pull it up. Now again, be really careful not to press too hard. You don't want to distort your stabilizer. So I'm just gonna put a few more pieces of tape. And I'm just doing along the edge. And I pressed hard right there, but that's because there was hoop under me. There we go. So that's secured in place, right? And it's flipped up. So now we're gonna flip our hoop back over to the front. Be gentle that you're not messing up the fabric underneath. Remove your original tape. Boop, boop. You can probably reuse the tape. So now you can see that we have a nice clean flip. But here's where the cool part comes in. You're gonna grab your 9" by 3" piece of fusible batting. You are gonna want to identify again the fusible side. It's kind of rough. You're gonna put fusible side up and you're gonna line it just along your stitched line. Again, this is the fusible side that you can see lined up with your stitch, and then you're gonna flip this over. Now make sure that it lies smoothly and you don't have a gap. Look at that, looks great. Now you're gonna take your handy dandy iron, and again, this is why I love this little iron, because it fits in these little small spaces, and just get it ironed in. Look at that, easy peasy. And now you're just gonna want a little tape. I'm gonna reuse some of the tape I used. And then just get that pressed on. Alrighty, if you wanna do a little bit on the side, you can. Don't have to. It's just what you feel. And a little bit right here. I know if you've watched my tutorials before, sometimes I use a ton of tape. Sometimes I don't. I just, you know, do what I feel. And if you want the tape that we used on the zipper, you can go on and pull that off too. You don't need it right there. Okay, so now we're ready to put it back on the hoop. So let's get the camera over there. Alrighty, and again, when you're putting this on, be really careful that you're not messing up the back. Get that in place. Again, make sure your zipper's not tucked anywhere weird. Put your foot down, and you're gonna see what's on your machine now is straight lines to quilt this entire top of your bag, right? So this is the right side of your bag when you have it facing up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. When you have your design facing up, it's actually the right side of the bag. But the way I have it oriented on my hoop, it looks like it's the top. And so now it is gonna do some nice quilting up and down. So we'll let that stitch out and we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, so now the machine has finished stitching. See, this area is completely quilted and you have a nice top stitch line along the edge of your zipper. So now we're gonna repeat the same thing we did for this side, sort of, but for the back side. So we're gonna flip it over and we have the back of our hoop facing us. So grab one piece of fabric that's 9 by 7 and you are gonna put it face down, but you're going to orient it where? So this side of the zipper is done. So you want it 1/4 inch over the remaining side of the zipper. And you want the fabric to be laying on top of what we just quilted. Let me move down so you can see. So you're gonna put it face down on top of what we just quilted, 1/4 inch to the edge of the existing zipper line. And then just kind of feel where your 1/4 inch is. There we go. And now you're gonna do some pretty serious taping because we are gonna keep this taped up the entire time we do the applique. We're only gonna face it down at the very end. And that is, you could, in theory, in the next step, flip it down, but I don't like all the knots from thread changes to show on the inside of my bag. So I am going to tape this really well. And then one more piece on the side. Okay, so see, we have it fully taped. And you're gonna see, depending on the size of your hoop, I'm using, my hoop accommodates about 9 inches square, so I have fabric hanging off, right? So when I flip it, I'm gonna make sure that stays up. And before I do anything else, I'm gonna come around here and tape it to the front. Now, your hoop might be a different shape, so this little step might be irrelevant for you. If that's the case, awesome. Because sometimes it does get a little annoying to have this taped to the front. And then just add a little bit more tape here. There we go. And I make sure that's really secure because I don't want to accidentally have that come untaped. You know? That wouldn't look very good, would it? Okay, so now we're gonna do the same thing on the front. Grab your remaining 9 inch by 7 inch piece, right? You're gonna put it on top of what's already quilted, and you're gonna go 1/4 inch past the zipper so that you have 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you are gonna put that in place and add some tape. I'm gonna do a little bit there and a little bit here. Now you may wanna tape the sides too, but in this case, I'm gonna risk it. So you're gonna put it back on the arm of your machine. And let me flip where you can see. There we go. Okay, so again, you're being really careful. You're making sure that it's still flipped up in the back, it's flipped the right direction on the front, and you're gonna put your foot down and your machine is gonna stitch one solid line again. Very similar to how we did the other side of the bag, right? This one line right here is securing the 2 pieces of fabric to the zipper and essentially creating what, if you were making this by hand on a sewing machine, would be your 1/4 inch seam allowance attaching it to the zipper. All right, cool. So now, again, sorry with my camera going back and forth. I'm filming by myself. You're gonna pull this off. You're gonna put it in front of you. And now you have the last piece of fusible batting, which is, again, 9 inches by 7 inches. Put the fusible side up facing you, so the textured side is facing you. And you're gonna line it up with that line that just stitched. You're gonna take the top, oh, you know what? Remove your tape. You know, if you have tape and where your seam is, it wouldn't be such a big deal for it to get stuck there. But if you're giving it as a gift, you don't want the crunch of the tape. So, line fusible side up, lined up with the seam you just stitched. You're gonna fold this over. Make sure that it feels nice. There's no like folds in your batting. And let's fuse that batting. And I have a Steady Betty underneath me at my workspace in front of the machine. Sometimes I'll use a sewing machine mat. We have a really cute sewing machine mat pattern, and I'll use that. Just depends on what I feel like. Lately, I have been using this Steady Betty a lot, though. Okay, so now this is in place. You can tape this in place if you want to, but the fusible batting kind of just keeps it there. My hoop fits this piece exactly, so I'm not worried about it moving anywhere. So now, again, the lining that we taped in on this last step is still taped around my hoop, or it's still taped up on the back of your hoop. You've not folded it down yet. So we are gonna put this back on, and you're gonna see what your machine is gonna wanna stitch now is first it's gonna do an outline, a rectangle to secure this piece to your stabilizer. And it's also gonna do our very first applique placement guide. Exciting stuff, because we're getting to the cool parts. Well, this is pretty cool too, if you think about it. We've put the zipper in now. And so the top stitch that it does is a triple stitch. We do that so that it's really secure. Grab that piece of tape is bugging me. There we go. And once it's done with this top stitch, it's gonna do a rectangle, or I guess a 3 sides of the rectangle for us. See? And what's great is that while we are doing all of the applique and the decorative stitches on the applique, we're gonna be quilting the rest of our bag, because the fusible batting is under here, so you're gonna have that nice texture of a quilted bag. Okay, and now it's gonna go into the center, and it's gonna do the first piece, piece number 1, which is this piece. And so the way I have it oriented in my hoop, it's actually gonna be like this. And again, you're sticking with a white thread still. There's only gonna be 1 thread change in this to a black. Well, I'm sorry, we'll change to white again at the end. But when we're doing the decorative stitches, we'll switch to a black thread, and then at the very end when we finish in the hoop, we'll stitch it with a white thread for that finishing zigzag stitch. So cool. Don't you love that you're not having to like trim and cut pieces? It's awesome. Okay, so let's get this moved back so you can watch the magic of ironing. Alrighty, and again, just be really careful you don't get caught on your fabric anywhere. So let me show you what that stitch looks like. Can you see it? I know it's hard to see because there's so much print on the fabric, but you have an outline of this piece. So what you're gonna wanna do is make sure that you fit it in that outline perfectly and kind of initially lay it out. And then what I like to do, I call it the little loose ends, the little moving parts of the petals. I'm gonna start by ironing them first. So if you get them in place first, then the rest is just gonna follow. So see, I'm kind of going piece by piece, if you will, or petal by petal. Okay, cool. Look at that, first piece on. No trimming, no cutting, awesomeness. We're gonna put this back on the hoop and get your view back. There we go. And so what the machine is going to stitch now is our second placement guide. And that is of piece number 2, this little yellow piece. So these first 2 things that we iron on, super straightforward. What's fun about this month is that there's some overlapping of the pieces. So you'll see that not this next applique guide, but the third one, we're gonna have some fun with placing the body and then these 2 legs and then the stem. It's really cool. Oh, and then the 1 leg under here. And I'll walk you through it. It might look a little intimidating that there's, you know, some overlapping and underlapping, but it's so cool how easy it is with the embroidery machine. Alrighty, and get this back over here. And again, I'm taking you through each and every step. So if you need to fast forward because you know what you're doing at this step, go on and do that. Or if you're stitching alongside of me, I hope that you're finding this helpful. So again, make sure that all your petals are lined up. There we go. And you have your second piece in place. Super cute. I love the fabrics this month. So the background, I forget who the designer is, but the background fabric is a Riley Blake fabric. I don't think it's a Lori Hole print, but it might be, I'm not sure. Okay, so put your foot down, and what's gonna happen now is it's gonna do an outline of about 4 or 5 pieces. So we'll let that stitch out. But then the fabrics, so the fabrics for the yellow Swiss and then the fun little yellow dot, that is a cute lake house print. And actually this green Swiss is a lake house green Swiss on the frog. And then the white eyes and then the stem are both Riley Blake confetti cottons. So some really cute fabric lines as always. All right, so you can see that it's stitching several pieces, and those are going to be the layers that we're going to work with in just a second. So now it's going to stitch the final piece of this step, which is the long stem that the frog is holding on to. Okay, cool. So now let's do some neat layering with our pieces. So let's get our hoop in front of us. Again, be really careful that the back, or actually it's the lining of your bag, is staying nice and out of the way. So let me show you what we've stitched. Can you see? There's an outline and it looks like a little collection of legs. See that? So I'm going to tell you the order to place it down, and I'm going to give you ironing recommendations so that you don't iron anything too soon. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get the top of your petal in place and make sure that it's lined up all the way down, but you're only going to iron the first like inch. So go to about here. So see, I've ironed only until here. Now the next piece you're going to want to grab is the little frog body. And the bottom of his body goes under and the top of his body goes under, but his little hand goes on top. Now you're going to get him lined up all the way, and his little body comes out over here, so make sure you have it lined up everywhere. All right, and make sure that's going to be in place. Okay, perfect. So again, he goes under, over, under. Now, don't iron his hand or the stem, just press him in place right out here on the outside. See, so I've only ironed a little bit of his body. Now we're gonna grab this top leg, and I should be telling you all the numbers, but I have forgotten them. Okay, so now we're gonna put this in place, this leg, and we're gonna be careful when we iron it because we don't want to iron the hand down because the next piece is gonna go with the hand. Okay, so we've got that tacked down. Now you're gonna wanna get this little leg. He is this piece. And just make sure you have him going. He's easy to tell which direction he goes because the pointy side goes towards the bottom of his body. So get that in place. And see his little hand? You want to flip his hand up gently. And now that leg is under the hand. So easy, right? So now you can iron the hand. And you can iron that little foot. Don't iron too far down because see right here at the bottom of the body, we have one leg to slip under. So get this little leg. He goes under the stem. And now everything is in place. Perfect. So now everything can be ironed. And you don't want to drag your iron, just kind of pick it up and place it down. Cool. That was easy, right? Like it seems like it's going to be complicated. It's really not. All right, cool. So these are what your pieces are going to look like. Maybe that direction will help you. Right? Okay, so now it's time to put this back on the hoop. And what the machine is going to stitch now is our next to the last applique guide. So it's going to stitch 3 pieces. It's going to stitch one of the hands, the little hand at the top. It's going to stitch his very last leg that's missing. And it's going to stitch his little face because that's not stitched yet either. So there we go. And again, just have those pieces ready. And this is the next to the last step of the applique pieces. And then we will move on to the decorative stitch and then pretty much we're almost done. And this bag is especially quick to make this month because there is only one thread color in the stitching. It's black the whole time this month. Whereas a lot of times, you know, we'll switch from like red, blue, green, yellow, like multiple colors. This month, very quick to make. Okay, and now we'll move this right here. And again, I know that technically my little frog in the hoop looks like he's upside down to you, but he's not, he's right. I just have him oriented on the screen a certain way. So now there is no matter which one you place first out of these 3. So you're gonna get his little head in place. And the pieces fit perfectly in their little outline. Get this last little leg. There we go. And again, this iron is just awesome because it fits inside the hoop. You're not struggling and burning yourself with like your regular iron. And it's also a great iron to take to retreats. I love this guy. The one I'm using is, I would say 2 or 3 years old. I never can remember. It's at least 2 years old. And he just keeps on going. Okay, so now we've ironed those 3 pieces on. Let's put it back on the hoop, or on the arm of the machine. And we're gonna stitch our very last applique outline. There we go, which is an outline for his 2 eyes. And then it's gonna do his last little foot down here. And once we iron those on, it's gonna be time for a thread change. So you want to go on and have your black thread ready. Usually I use the Poly Madeira threads. This month I just happen to be using the Exquisite thread. I really like it. It's 100% polyester. Works great on my machine. All right, cool. So before I take that off, I'm going to go on and change my thread so I don't forget. All right, so you can see the machine, it's put itself back where it's in position for the next step. But I'm changing my thread, but remember, we're gonna take it off in just a second and iron these pieces on. I'm just putting the thread right now. Alrighty, and there we go. So we've got our thread, but we have to iron these last pieces on. So again, take this off and put it in front of you. And you have two eyes. Now I can give you a little hint in placing the eyes because they look exactly alike almost. There's a little jut out on the left eyeball. So that kind of helps you. They're not the exact same size because that's not how the designer drew them. Oh, I dropped one. And this little guy, actually think he goes that way. Yep. Get him right in place. And then we have this last little bitty foot. And so now officially, all of our applique pieces are ironed on. We've already put the black thread just now. So it's time to put this on, hit go, and the machine is gonna do all of your decorative stitching, and you are gonna see your Trevor the Tree Frog totally come to life. Because right now, you know, he's just like a collection of pieces. No character yet. But once this starts going, you will see that he gets really adorable really fast. So we'll let that stitch out, and I'll see you at the next step. Okay, so check out your darling decorative stitches on your Trevor the Tree Frog. He's come to life. So there's a few final steps to do. First thing is we're gonna sew two eyeballs on. So just take a really little needle, thread it with black thread. I just grabbed some 50 weight black thread. You can use, I think you'd be fine using embroidery thread even, if you have it handy. And these little buttons are super little, so be really careful not to drop them. And then you're gonna be really careful not to put too much pressure on the contents of your hoop, because if you do, you're gonna mess up the last couple of steps. And his little eyeballs just go towards the bottom. And I just go through once and then come back up. And you'll see it's a little hard to aim. Oh, did I get it? Careful not to poke yourself like I just did. All right, so I just go through twice. And then because this is gonna be not seen, because it's got the fusible batting and then it's about to have the lining on it, I travel underneath. I don't knot off on each eye. If you were doing something with a light background that didn't have like the fusible batting, or if you're doing hand embroidery, you never want to travel. But in this case, because it's not visible, I don't see a problem with it. Look at him, he gets so cute when he has those little eyeballs. I love him. So cute. All right, and go one more time through. And you just gotta try and aim. And again, use a really little needle. Eek. There we go, I got through. And again, I'm only trying to touch the actual hoop and not put any pressure. Okay, so now flip him over and we're gonna knot it off, right? And I actually use my traveling thread to knot around. That way I avoid putting any pressure by trying to get my needle through anywhere else. Don't know that that's necessarily a best practice, but it works for the purposes of our little zipper bag. Alrighty, and just two little knots. And I just do two, see? And then get that trimmed, put that where you're not gonna lose your needle. And now it is time, dun dun dun, remember this piece, the lining we've had taped up the whole time? Now it is time to let it be free. So remove the tape that you had holding it originally. There we go. And get your tape off the sides. There we go. And it's time to smooth this down. And again, you want to just make sure that you keep it smooth. I'm going to reuse a couple pieces of my tape. Hope they're still sticky enough. And then just make sure that this is nicely kind of finger pressed right here. You don't want to bubble inside. And you're gonna get your tape on. And I'm gonna do one more little piece over here. Okay, so now let's flip your hoop right side up again. And so now you're going to, everything's done, right? But here's a really important thing not to forget. You're gonna wanna unzip. You technically don't need to unzip till the next step, but I like to go on and start it before I forget. So I go all the way, I leave like an inch or two down here. So now I'm gonna put this back on the hoop. And let me get you facing the hoop. There you go. Again, always be careful your zipper's not getting caught. And now you want to change, you've had on black thread. Don't forget to pull that black thread off right now, because this line is visible and you don't wanna ruin all your hard work. So at this stage, switch back to white thread. And so what we're gonna stitch first is a rectangle securing that lining. Okay, so get your needle threaded. Okay, so we're next to the last step. Put your foot down, and it's gonna stitch right where it did before. Well, actually, we give it one more little line here. There we go. And it's gonna go around right here. Now what you wanna have prepared while this is stitching, remember the back that we already quilted and made? I've gone and trimmed mine. See, this is my outermost. I've left about a 1/4 inch all the way around. So you take it out of the hoop, remove the stabilizer from the edges. See, this is the inside of your bag. This is the outside of your bag. Looks so nice with that label, doesn't it? Really makes it look finished. So after this is completed on this step, we are going to lay this face down on top of the hoop, and the machine is gonna do a nice zigzag stitch securing it. That's why we have the zipper open now, because once we stitch the back on, how would we flip the bag, right? You have to be able to turn the bag inside out. So that's why we've opened the zipper. All right, so you can see it's moving into the corner, and that's where it's gonna start with a zigzag. So what you do, I just wanna make sure you have everything oriented the right way. So let me show you what we have. So this is your hoop that you're working with, right? So this right here on the right side of your screen is the bottom of my bag. So what I'm gonna do, look, I'm gonna make sure that my label is gonna be on the bottom. However, I need to flip it because I need the inside of the bag facing me, right? We're putting right sides together, and we've made sure the label is oriented the right direction to the bag, okay? So now what you're gonna wanna do is line the 8 inches up. So this 8 inches stitched here is the same 8 inches that's stitched on what's in your hoop. And this is why I give myself a little bit of extra. It's just so I don't make a mistake. But you're just gonna feel those corners and make sure that you get your bag lined up, right? So we have right sides together, the label's facing the right direction, and it's time to zigzag, and our zipper is open. Not past the 8 inch line, but leave yourself like 1 inch or 2 inches. I'm just gonna do, you don't really have to tape at this step, but I'm going to so that I don't mess up at the end of the video. Okay, so you're just gonna put this back on the hoop and do the very final step, which is the zigzag stitch around all 4 edges of your bag. And then when that's done, you simply trim 1/4 inch away from that zigzag, and you're gonna flip your bag. So let's get this sewing, and I'll show you when the bag is flipped. All right. Okay, so now it's time to unhoop. Everything has been zigzag stitched. You can see I did a lot of taping. I'm going to get all that taken off, set your hoop aside, and now all you need to do is simply trim about 1/4 inch away from your zigzag stitching, right? So just trim all the way around the 4 sides, and then you are going to flip your bag. Now, one thing I like to do before I trim is just remove the stabilizer from my zipper area. And you can see I just use a pair of scissors and kind of pull it out. So I'm going to trim my bag and flip it out, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, here's my finished bag. It's so cute. I just simply flipped it, and then I'm going to take my iron and press it a little bit and just make sure my seams look nice on the edges. But now I am ready to gift this. I'm actually giving this bag to someone really special to our company. So I know that she has loved this design. So on Tuesday, next time she's here, I'm going to get this bag to her. So just double check for any threads you might have missed in the trimming and get those trimmed off. And you're ready to give this as a gift or enjoy using it yourself. It's nice and sturdy, and it has a really nice professional finished look with the label on the back. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it, and happy stitching, everybody.